Hi, welcome to the video tutorial for a lesson called Prediction Correlation. There are two lessons, one after the other, and I'm really only going to talk in depth about one because the second lesson follows logically, where you're giving the children a way of looking at correlation that helps them make sense of real data. What we want to give them is a way of looking at data that's a model to help them think about and explore relationships, rather than, which is what a lot of pupils do, is simply draw a straight line. All graphs have to have straight lines. Draw a line and say, that's a very strong positive correlation. Because all they've picked up on is the fact that you just join the dots up, that you go from the first point to the end point. I had a really interesting science activity where this emerged, where some pupils, one group of pupils, had some data that did that. And there was 5 pupils in the group. One pupil, 2 of them, wanted to do that, and the rest of them wanted to do that, and they had an argument. And we had to then discuss what the line meant. And actually, at this point, was it helpful to draw that line or that line? And as one girl said, well, actually, that line means the numbers go down by the same amount. And I just think pupils get confused because they've never been given the opportunity to think it through. They've never been given the opportunity to realise that graphs just aren't straight lines. And I think it's a misunderstanding. We do them an injustice as a way of looking at data in a mature way if all they pick up is that. And often there's a lovely lesson we do later in this strand where they're really faced with distance-time relationships, where they've got to make meaning from the graph. And the graphs aren't just images of what something looks like. They're a relationship between two variables that interact. So this lesson, I think, is a really, really important chance for children to make sense of what correlation actually is. So the scenario starts, and there's a cartoon about people buying a new shop. Is a family are buying a shop for the first time. Might they have problems? What might their first week's profit be like? So there's a chance to talk about finance, profit, loss, all that kind of stuff. Can you have no money? Can you have less than no money? I mean, the whole world is built upon a lack of conservation. We get money in and we spend more money than we get out. And we wonder why the world's in a mess. We wonder why people are going into debt. People then sell other people's debt. So people are making money from people having no money that can't pay. So it's the world's a mess because people don't understand conservation. So there's a lovely opportunity to explore these issues with the pupils. So the first week of opening the shop, they make loads of money. Why? Oh, everyone came to the shop and then people went somewhere else the next week. So you're actually talking about real life experiences of the pupils. People in your class will own shops that have businesses and they can share their own experiences and they're reflective of the parents. But the lesson starts where the pupils are given a worksheet for the profits of a shop from the first week to the 13th week. But they're not given the middle 4 values. And so you talk about what happens, they lost £250, because that might mean that they bought a load of stock and they didn't sell it all. They bought a load of drinks and it was a cold week, so they've got lots left over for the next week. That's called a loss. Again, a profit, you can even talk about red and black. What's interesting is in pairs giving the pupils this sheet. So what you ask them to do is fill in the gaps, because we don't know what they are. One, they don't believe you, they think there's an answer, but there actually isn't. But then they get plotted as a graph. And what is fascinating is some pupils sit there and can't do it. They can't spot patterns. They it's a fascinating activity to do, where the pupils can, because it's not a tidy pattern, because it's a real trend, it's variable, it's increasing and decreasing by different amounts, they really struggle. How people sit there and think, well, I don't know what to do. There isn't a pattern. Other pupils think, well, I'm going to plot the graph. So it's there, then it's there, then it's there, oh, then it's there, then it's back to there, then it's up to there. And what is fascinating is, I'll move that one over there, they actually can't see the pattern in that. And it's absolutely fascinating to see the children sit there and think, I can't do it. And rather than rush in and help, just let them struggle. Let them talk in their pairs. Give them time to solve the problem. What you do partway through the activities, you focus on week 9. So there's week 9. You say to them, right, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on what you think. If week 9 was a good week, what's the most money they could make? If week 9 wasn't a good week, what is the least money they could have made? Knowing that the profit, I often say at some point in the lesson, how happy was the shopkeeper after week 1? Not very happy. How happy is he after week 13? Very happy. So they can see a sense that their profit is increasing over time. So you hear them, let's have a look at week 9. Right? What do you think is the most profit they could have made? What do you think is the least profit they could have made? So I'll put it in 2 colours. So you end up going around the room and saying, what do you think is the most likely? Some is the maximum profit. Some will put that, 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 some will put that. Some will have very strange results like down here or up here. Some will just pick the maximum value on the graph. But you will get a cluster of points. Then you say, okay, what's the least likely, least profit they could have made? Some will do that. Some will do that, 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 some will do that. And you say, okay, do you notice anything? And we might talk about the range from there, but actually the range is more likely there to there because that's where most of them are. And you say, okay, where do you think, and this isn't exact, I'm just making this up to explain the lesson to you, where do you think is the most likely profit? And they said, well, I think it's about there. That's interesting. What should we call this? What should we call this way of doing maths? What's the answer? Oh, we don't know. Do you think this is a sensible place to put? Yeah, it seems right. Okay, that's being mathematical as well. So after they've done that, the pupils can then go back and finish filling this in, and then finish plotting the graph. And they say to them, okay, what we're going to do now in 5 minutes is on every group, because you know we do lots of work on graph, year 7 or whatever, I want you to draw the graph and tell me any patterns you notice. So do the graph, you think, you finish the graph, and we're going to have a look at the graph and see if you notice anything. So what you get is a range of answers that look like this. I've got real examples here that I could show you. So you've got these pupils are really coming up with some pattern there. They haven't bothered drawing the graph. This pupil have drawn that graph. This one's drawn something similar. And other people have just put the points in. But the idea is often I'll say to them, if I hold it away from you and I might colour those in, those bolder, can you see anything? And there's a sense that the data, there's a trend of data moving away. Others will do it like that. Others will do it like that. It's really interesting how they struggle. Some will just simply do that. Others will do that. And this kind of typifies the range of responses. Some will do that and leave it blank. Others will just go from the last one to the top one. Others will zigzag up. Others will do that. Others will do that. And they say, okay, which graph do you think? Which graph do you like? Which do you have problems with? Which do you think is the best way of showing this pattern? Because by now they've started to name it. They'll say it's going up and down and up. It's zigzagging up. They've never been given the chance to play mathematically with data and patterns and approach them from their own point of view. Normally they just we give them the answers. This is what I want you to do. We've never let them develop their own understanding of it. And I think it's important to take the time to do this when we're dealing with aspects such as correlation. So often they'll dispute this one. And usually if one group's come to them, they'll spend time talking to them, getting them to explain their ideas. That actually, it looks like there's a maximum line and a minimum line. So 1 week the populace is really big, 1 week it's lower, but it's actually going up. Some people think you can't have 2 lines on a graph. Some people think that one is the best one because it's zigzagging up. It's really interesting once they see this. I mean, my most memorable example of this lesson was at the end of the lesson, the children said, "Oh, that looks like a street." And I said, "Well, actually, that type of relationship I call correlation." And someone in the class started humming the theme tune for Coronation Street, and they called it Correlation Street. The idea that a correlation is a trend of data going upwards. The second part, the final part of this lesson, is where you give them some data where you've got someone's maths, I mean, we'd have to change it to the numerical values now, but you've got some maths GCSE results and some science GCSE results, and you say to them, is there a link between how good you are at maths and how good you are at science? And let them discuss it. And there are hundreds of other examples of correlations you can share with the pupils. Because what happens in the second correlation lesson is you get them to think about a scenario where there's no correlation, there's a negative correlation, and there's a positive correlation. And what you ask the pupils to do is they come up with a line of best prediction. So they come up with a median value. So it's almost as if for each of these they come up with a median value. And so what you end up with is the line of best prediction. That's how you're introducing correlation in these thinking maths lessons. But that's much more straightforward, and you could follow it straight on or give it for a homework.